Hi there, my sweet friends. How are you? I hope this video finds you well, and that you're staying safe, and that you're enjoying some time with your family while we can't be in school together. I miss you so very much, and it breaks my heart that I can't be in the classroom with you like normal, that I can't see those sweet smiling faces, and that we can't do all the fun activities that we're used to doing together. The good thing is that I can still read to you from my home. And we can still have our story time together from where I am to where you are. But before we get started reading our story today, one thing I want to do, just like we do in our classroom, every single morning before we do anything else, I want to take just a second to share some good things with you all. So my good thing is that over the last week, I've got to go outside and really enjoy the beautiful weather that we've been given. I've got to get out in the fresh air with my family. I've got to do lots of fun activities like go on nature walks outside, spend some time with my dog that you guys have heard so much about throughout this school year, and I've loved every minute of it. While I've been outside, I have seen signs of spring wherever I've went, and that has made me so excited. And that reminded me of one of my favorite springtime stories that I wanted to read with you all today. And that is Fletcher and the Springtime Blossoms. So I have permission to read you guys this story from Harper & Collins Publishing today. But before we get started diving into our book and go ahead and get started reading, what I want to do is take just a second to see if you remember the parts of the book that we've learned together throughout the school year. So with whoever you're with right now, whether it's your brother, your sister, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, whoever's watching this video with you right now, I want to see if you can name the parts of the book as I point to them. So let's go ahead and get started. What do we call this part of our book? Or the name of our book? What's that called? If we look at this whole part of our book, what do we call that? If we turn our book to the side, what do we call this part of our book? When we flip our book over, what's this part of the book? And when we open it up on the inside, there's a certain page that tells us the title, and sometimes it tells us the author and illustrator on this page. What do we call this page in our book? Great job, my friends. I'm glad you were able to hopefully remember all the parts of the book that we've learned together throughout this school year. So let's take a second, too, to review the author and the illustrator. So the author of our book, Fletcher and the Springtime Blossoms, is Julia Rawlinson. So can you take just a second and tell whoever you're with what the job of an author is? What do they do in creating a story? Our illustrator of our book is Tiffany Beek. What does an illustrator do? Why are they so important in creating a story? Now let's take a second and let's look at the cover of our book. So here we see a picture. Based upon this picture, do you think that this story is going to be a fiction story or a non-fiction story? So with whoever you're watching with right now, I want you to turn to them and tell them whether you think that our story is going to be fiction or non-fiction based upon this cover and how you know. So now that we've taken a second to review the book, the parts of the book, the author and illustrator, fiction or non-fiction, let's go ahead and dive into our story and see what it's all about. So Fletcher and the Springtime Blossoms. The woods were full of chirping, bustling, sing-song sounds of spring. Fletcher bounced along with his nose in the air, sniffing the just-burst buds of flowers and playing chase with butterflies. With his head spinning with sights and sounds, he tumbled happily down the hill into the sunny orchard. But when he picked himself up from the ground, he couldn't believe his eyes. What do you think he sees on these pages of the book? What is that? A soft breeze danced throughout the branches, carrying snowy flakes. Snow? So late in spring, thought Fletcher. It will be too cold for the buds and the butterflies. There is no time to lose. Looking for someone to tell, he trotted back up the hill and passed a pair of birds cuckooing on a branch. "You've flown to your summer home too soon," cried Fletcher. "I've been down to the orchard and there's more snow on the way." "Then we should fly back south," they called. "But first we must tell Porcupine. He's just come out of his bed of leaves and he needs to snuggle back down or he'll freeze." Fletcher and the birds found Porcupine, stretching and scratching. "There's snow on the way," panted Fletcher. "I saw it in the orchard. It will be too cold for the butterflies. The birds will need to fly south, and you must hide away." "Then I should crawl back into my bed," snuffled Porcupine sadly. "But first we must tell Squirrel that he needs to hunt for food. He's eaten his winter store of nuts, and he'll need to find some more." Fletcher, the birds, and Porcupine found Squirrel scampering after sunbeams. "Snow is blowing in from the orchard," gasped Fletcher. "It will be too cold for the butterflies. The birds will need to fly south. Poor Porcupine must go back to bed, and you must find some food." "You're right. I've eaten my spring feast," said Squirrels, "and all my stores are gone. But before I hunt for more, we need to tell the rabbits to munch on as much grass as they can before the snow falls." Fletcher, the birds, Porcupine, and Squirrel hurried off again. The rabbits were rolling down the hill next to their burrow. "Stop playing!" cried Fletcher. "There's snow blowing in from the orchard. It will be too cold for the butterflies. The birds will need to fly south. Poor Porcupine must go back to bed. Squirrel needs to find food, and you must munch more grass." "Before we eat," said the rabbits, staggering dizzily to their feet. "Let's go play in the snow." So the rabbits hoppity-roly, polly-plopped down the hill through the woods. They were chased by Squirrel, Porcupine, the birds, and a bouncy, full of important fox, all the way to the orchard, where the ground was white with blossoms. Blossoms bobbing in the branches, blossoms blowing in the breeze, blossoms blanketing the ground, and not a snowflake to be found. Those are blossoms, not snow, you foolish fox," the animals cried. Fletcher blinked and rubbed his eyes, feeling very silly. But then the animals scooped up pawfuls and clawfuls of blossoms from the ground and covered him in a tickly shower of fluttering white petals. Fletcher and his friends ran and played between the trees until at last they all collapsed in a blossomy, soft white heap. Then the birds fluttered back to their branch with beakfuls of blossoms to line their nest. Porcupine snuffled off up the slope, his quills dotted with tiny white petals. Squirrel went chasing up and down the tree after snow-white petals dancing in the breeze, and the rabbits bounced back up the hill with blossoms to brighten their burrow. But Fletcher just lay smiling in his soft bed of petals, watching the blossoming branches bobbing overhead. In the end. So my friends, on Class Dojo, I'll be posting some writing activities that you can do on this book throughout this week, and I hope you'll check those out and engage in some good writing skills for you all this week. For my friends who are in my classroom, you know that I say this every single day, so you know it by heart. But for my other Hillcrest Cowboys, I hope you never ever forget that you are so special and you are so loved. I miss you all, and I can't wait to see you soon. Thank you for listening with me.